Okay, hello, everybody. Pop culture curator here. This is Wednesday evening, obviously, which I'm sure you guys knew, and this back for another episode of Gilligan's Island reviews. Gorilla's Random Thoughts here is with me on the panel, and every week we are going to cover Gilligan's Island, and we're going to review two episodes. Last week we covered the inspiration for Gilligan's Island, or at least what I considered the inspiration for Gilligan's Island. And we covered also the unaired pilot, which was filmed in Hawaii, and it had the original cast before NBC decided that it didn't like three of the cast and then had them replace them. Okay. And today we're going to be doing the actual aired episodes of Two on a Raft and Home Sweet Hut.
Oh,
and
so hopefully I watched the right episodes this week.
This week's, hopefully you got the right ones right. I apologize for that. We still need to get caught up on the unaired pilot, because I know last week I feel bad because you said you had not seen that before. And how are you doing, Gorilla?
Oh, I'm doing good. Looks like we got Oiler Greg, Captain Finity, and Resolute German in the chat.
Hello to everybody in the chat. I appreciate you all being here. I know you're busy, and I know it's late for you. Oiler Greg, so good to see you. Captain, it's good to see you. Resolute Germ, hail. We'll be getting starting here with episode 1. I'm putting my files together here at the last minute as we speak. I had my window open, and then, like a fool, I closed it somehow, which is not a good idea.
Oh, that happens.
It does happen. You never know what to expect, right? But before I start the review of episode 1, I have a book here which I'm going to share with you. Let me share my windows here. Of course it's going to disappear. There we go. And this is the book that I will be sharing information on throughout the stream. Hopefully you can see that. If it'll stay on the screen, oh, I see, I need to pause it. Bear with me here. I'm still learning how to do this right without messing it up. Okay, I'm going to leave it on here like this. And this is the book I'll be referring to throughout the series of reviews. This is Inside Gilligan's Island, From Creation to Syndication, by Sherwood Schwartz, the producer. And if you have not read this book, I highly recommend it. You'll find it on Amazon as well as other sources. It's a little pricey. You can get you a used version if you want. Might save you a little bit of money. You can get a used copy in pretty good shape usually. But I'm going to start a little bit towards the beginning here and read a little bit on an introduction here in the book by Sherwood Schwartz himself. Kind of in a nutshell, and how in one page here he kind of had to struggle to get Gilligan's Island on the air against all odds, because he had presented it to several networks and had been turned down constantly. But I'm going to make sure here to cover just a moment, everybody. There we go. Resolute Germ says hello, guys. Captain Finity says popcorn. Well, I would love to have popcorn. Shields up. And Oiler Greg says, phasers fire. Oiler Greg says, hello, everyone. Captain Finity says, are those shields up or down? Oiler Greg says, shields non-responsive, Captain. And Captain Finity says, compensating now. Oiler Greg says, phasers unavailable when in warp drive, Captain. Motion picture rules. Yeah, and Captain, I found out that the pill that I took yesterday that made me feel ill was the folic acid.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Oiler Greg, depends on which episode you're watching. Because I seen him fire at fork.
Right, well, that's why he said motion picture, I think. And Captain Finity says they do keep changing those rules, don't they? Yes, they do, depending on the plot. Oiler Greg, security alert. Issued red shirts on the way. Speaking of red shirt, we have our little buddy Gilligan here. So we have a show with our own little red shirt. Okay, so before we get into episode 1, 2 on a Raft, which, like I stated last week, there was an unaired pilot filmed with actors that we're not used to seeing. The pilot was presented to the network, NBC, who liked the pilot but didn't like the 3 actors. So they suggested to Sherwood Schwartz to recast the Professor, Marianne, and Ginger. They were originally 3 other characters. That episode, they used bits and pieces of that episode to piece into this first episode that we have seen. So it's kind of like a Frankenstein of editing. It still looks good. It works smoothly. But it's similar to how they handled the menagerie in Star Trek Part 1 and 2, where they used the pilot episode of The Cage and they put bits and pieces throughout it. That is similar to this. So when we get to the first episode, I will note some of the differences and kind of point those out to you guys. And older Greg says, I feel safer already. And older Greg says, yes, I remember the pilot with different actors. Yeah, it wasn't too bad, but you know what? The network did a good job at recasting because they weren't funny. And I don't think they were sympathetic to Gilligan. They acted like they were hostile and didn't like him, which would not have worked in the long run for the series, because I think what made the series so well is, against all odds, they always loved each other and they always worked together.
I don't know. I beg to differ in the first episode.
Oh, good. Well, we will be covering that. Resolute Germ says, too bad that red shirt accepted the proper fate of those who hear the cursed shirt. And Ola Greg says, how would you have liked the series with the different actors? I don't think I would have, but I don't know. And Gorilla here, he only saw me reviewing the pilot. He hasn't actually seen it, but I'm hoping to show him that unaired pilot soon so he can tell you all his opinion of it, or what he thinks. Okay, so I'm going to read from you now the introduction from this book, Inside Gilligan's Island, by Sherwood Schwartz. And it starts with, the episodes of Gilligan's Island have been repeated more often in more places than any other television series in history. Yes, even more than I Love Lucy. Yet compared to the trip of the SS Minnow through network waters, the maiden voyage of the Titanic was a pleasure cruise. The battles and struggles in getting Gilligan's Island on the air and keeping it there were monumental. John Rich, the director of many of the early episodes, suggested I call my company Lazarus Productions because it had come back from the dead so often. In spite of all the difficulties, Gilligan's Island went on to become a major television hit. It fathered, or mothered, depending on the sex of that island, 2 Saturday morning animated series. It also spawned 3 primetime television films, one of which, Rescue from Gilligan's Island, remains one of the highest rated film specials in television history. Personal note for me, I remember watching it live, and yes, everybody was watching it that night. And okay, the year 1988 marks a memorable anniversary in the life of Gilligan's Island, the 25th year since the pilot film in 1963. This book deals with that history, starting with the incredible meetings I had with CBS executives, chairman of the boards. There's a long list of names here. I'll spare everybody. A network, and then he said the network has vice presidents like a dog has fleas, and they are just as maddening. The year was 1963, and the 3 networks were already beginning to use the dictatorial power Newton Minow, chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, had handed to them. Mr. Minnow's famous Vast Wasteland speech in 1961 at the NAB convention was brought on by the quiz show scandals, payola investigations, and the general low esteem in which television was held. Unintentionally, probably, that speech that had a lot more devastating impact than the conditions he was criticizing. In effect, the chairman of the FCC, speaking for the government, took the position that the networks are responsible for everything they broadcast. The shocking aftermath of that designation of responsibility by Mr. Minow and the FCC gave ABC, CBS, and NBC absolute authority over everything that comes into your living room on network television. The networks have become the de facto producers of all primetime programs on their channels, with creative controls over writing, casting, directing, editing, and even the musical score. In fact, more often than not these days, the network is responsible for the actual concepts of the programs on their airwaves. Lord Acton once said, power tends to corrupt and absolute power corrupts absolutely. However, I'm not a historian or philosopher. I'm basically a comedy writer, and comedy writers by nature view the glass as half full rather than half empty. So, looking back over the times of turmoil, some of the valleys of deepest despair have become the highest peaks of comic recollection. So, sit back and get ready for a tale of a fateful trip. Okay, so first we're going to start here with. Oh, and Resolute Germ says escaped. All right, so we're going to get into episode 1, 2 on a raft. If I can move fast enough here.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I want to say is I know you said something about how they covered it before, but I think I find it highly unlikely that the Howells would be on there. They'd have their own yacht. Ginger, she would probably find one of the bigger cruise lines or find some fancy Hollywood guy to be on his yacht, you know.
Right.
The professor I could see. Marianne, how would she be able to afford a trip to Hawaii, let alone a cruise on a small boat? Working in a general store.
Right, because you think she would have the money, right?
Right.
Give me just a moment. I'll give you that answer now. I am going onto the website.
Yeah, because I could see Skipper on his own boat, and Gilligan must have saved his life or something for him not to have fired his ass a long time ago. And the professor I can see taking a 3-hour tour, but the rest, you know, it just doesn't fit in.
Well, that's just it. There was a scene in the unaired pilot that we showed last week, and this scene did not make it into the aired first episode. And in that unaired pilot, Gilligan and Skipper discuss how Gilligan saved Skipper's life. When they served together in the military in World War II, there was an explosive bomb that apparently came loose and started rolling on the ship on the bow towards the skipper, and it almost hit him. And Gilligan apparently jumped and pushed Skipper out of the way and saved his life. So that's why you will always see, that's a little known fact that you'll never see on the show, but that's the reason and the explanation for the dedication that the skipper always had to Gilligan, no matter through hard times or disaster.
Okay.
I don't know if that helps make sense or not.
Okay, that explains Gilligan there.
Gilligan and the professor. Why you put that a bit right? Okay. I know you guys are like, okay, let's get going. All right, let's get going. Okay, I'm looking up. There's a letter. Bob Dever has a website, and it's ran by his wife Dreama. So she's been carrying the website since he passed away. And there's a letter that a fan wrote to Bob Denver, and he loved it so much he posted it on his website. And in that letter, it explains why the castaways are together and the reasoning for a lot of questions that most of us have. And I have his website open now, and I will go through it, but I don't want to hold up the audience too long, so I'll cover it a little later on in this stream. So before we waste any more time, I know everyone's time is valuable there in the chat. We're going to go with the first episode here, and I'll do my best to explain it the best I can. And if you have not seen the first episode, this will be a spoiler review. I suggest you have seen. I suggest you watch it if you have not seen it. And here you see is the first episode. Oh, I got the wrong window. Oh, bear with me here. I pulled up the wrong clip. I don't want any sound, and I don't want any strikes. So here we go. Okay. The opening that we are used to from the first pilot. And as you can see, this is the dock, and we have a still of our first mate here getting ready. I want to go back here a second. We have the dock, and I'm going to show you something here. Here's a little known fact that we'll cover. In this clip, if you look at Gilligan, that's actually, he's on the minnow and he's looking down, and if you look behind him by his waist, those are trees. This is actually a scene from the unaired pilot where they're already on the island and they're already crashed, and Gilligan and Skipper are going to hunt for water. But they used this scene to make it look like this was Gilligan on the dock, getting ready to depart. So that's a little bit of trivia with this episode, this shot. So we have our shot of Gilligan, our intrepid first mate, and then we have the skipper here, played by Alan Hale Jr., which we all know and love, and the wonderful SS Minnow. And you'll notice the name of the ship is SS Minnow. That's the reason why I read the introduction from the book, is because Sherwood Schwartz did this as a play on words on the FCC chairman, who said that TV was a vast wasteland. Except the FCC chairman's last name was spelled M-I-N-O-W. So Schwartz added another N. So we have the SS Minnow. So thank you to the FCC chairman for being a jerk. But because of you, we got the name of the SS Minnow, which I think is an excellent name for the little tiny boat.
Yeah, one of my old coworkers said he responded to a fire at a house, or a fire alarm, or some neighbor called the house on. Called the fire department on someone having a lit up Christmas tree there in their neighbor's house. They get stupid calls like that a lot, and so they had to go inspect the entire house and all that. He said in the basement someone had like a life preserver, or like a life saver, those circle.
Right, the styrofoam circle thing you throw out.
Yeah, and on there was someone painted SS Minnow on it.
Well, I would have taken care of that.
Yeah.
By the way, if there items from this show have sold over the years and for lots of money, so they are valuable.
Well, this area has money.
Right.
In the summertime.
And here we see them setting out on their 3-hour cruise. By the way, when this was filmed, this scene we're looking at here is a clip from the first unaired pilot. And if you watch this scene, you'll notice that the flag is at half-mast. When they shot this scene, this is the same day that they found out and discovered that John F. Kennedy had been assassinated. So it was a very somber date there for the cast and crew, knowing that back then they were very sad and brokenhearted of what happened and due to shock of the situation, but they still had to continue filming, and they prevailed. So if you notice the flag at half-mast, that's the reason why. And then suddenly we get some stock footage of lightning here. And that's when, as they say, the weather started getting rough and the tiny ship was tossed. I don't want to say or play too much because I don't want to get a strike on our channel. But as we all know here, then the ship gets tossed and spins around, and they end up here on this deserted island. And this is also a clip from the unaired pilot. So you're going to notice that the SS Minnow, the boat, will shift position and locations throughout this episode. So here we see it right there on the beach. You'll see it next to that palm tree. But you're gonna, when the episode actually plays, you'll see it in a different position. So that explains why.
Hey, I got a question here.
Yes, sir.
How fast is a knot?
I'd have to look it up.
Because for the travel as far as they did to a deserted island there, especially after World War II, being that close to Hawaii, they should have known about this island. It should have been charted, even for World War II purposes.
1 nautical mile per hour.
Okay, so it's 1 knot, 1 mile per hour.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
There's no way in hell they could have made that to that island there from when we later on in the series when we learn exactly how far they are from Hawaii. There's no way in hell they could have made that overnight.
Well, what happened was it was supposed to be a 3-hour tour. Remember, they had planned on being out for 3 hours and then returning. But once they got stuck in the storm, they were out there fighting that storm for several hours, which is the reason why here in the first episode we see them waking up the next day. So that's the reason why they ended up so far away. And the storm also blew that little vessel all over the place too. So I don't think they had much control of which way it went or how far it went, at least in my opinion. So here's our
250 miles over a 12-hour period.
Well, we will be covering that if it's 250 miles. And we have Alan Hale as our skipper, and the good old Thurston Howell III. And by the way, Jim Backus worked with Sherwood Schwartz at least 10, 15 years prior to Gilligan's Island. Sherwood Schwartz was a writer on a television show, and Jim Backus was playing a rich millionaire character. And he said the millionaire was so rich, he had a chauffeur to turn left and a chauffeur to turn right. So here we have Jim Backus as Thurston Howell III, which we all know. And excellent trivia question for everybody. How old do you think Natalie Schafer was here when they filmed this? What do you think, Gorilla?
I'm guessing around 55 with the makeup.
Natalie Schafer, when she began filming Gilligan's Island, was 65, far above and beyond older than the rest of the cast.
Okay, so take a decade.
she looked actually very great once you watch the show and realize her age. And remember now, she stuck with the show for not only the 3 seasons, but 15 years later, she made the movies, and she went on cast reunions and interviews after that. She was around a long time, and she did a lot of physical comedy. So I give her credit for that. The only thing that she asked for with the producers of being on the show is not to get any extreme close-ups. She didn't want the camera to get extreme close-ups and show her age. So in most cases, you'll see her at a mid shot or a waist shot, but not that many close-ups of her actual face. Oh, and by the way, yesterday I was feeling a little ill. I had taken some medicine that the doctor gave me. I was not feeling quite myself. So when I made these clips yesterday, I unfortunately forgot, and I took these clips from the DVD set that I have, forgetting that I had the Blu-ray version. So what you see here is for tonight's stream for these 2 episodes will be from the DVD version. So they won't look pristine and perfect. But beginning next week, everything you see will be coming from the Blu-ray. So it'll be much sharper than what you're seeing now. So we know we have the professor, or we don't have the professor. We have Tina Louise as Ginger. And by the way, I don't know if you guys are aware, but the only reason why Tina Louise signed on to this show, because originally she thought it was all about her. And she got upset when she found out she was only a small, minor character. And Sherwood Schwartz had to literally remind her and said, look, this isn't Ginger's Island, it's Gilligan's Island. But she accepted the role anyway. And, I can kind of understand her. I know she had a little inflated ego, but she did play in some really good, solid, serious movies before Gilligan's Island came along. I recommend God's Little Acre, if nobody's seen that. That's a good example of her, some of the work she did prior to Gilligan's Island. Okay, so we got Gilligan, the skipper, the millionaires, and the rest. I know Gorilla really doesn't like this, but
yeah, it's automatic F until they fix that atrocity. Automatic F.
Well, then are you going to give every episode in the first season an F?
We'll see if we can change my mind here and go throughout.
Well, what happened was obviously, and when they created the opening introduction of the series, they didn't know that the Professor and Marianne characters were going to stand out so much. They weren't expecting people to bond with them as much as they did, especially when those fan letters started coming in. They were flooded with fan letters. So that is the reason why there was a renegotiation after season 1, and Bob Denver insisted that they added Marianne and the Professor to the credits at the beginning of the show. Yeah. So you can thank Bob Denver for that. So that's the reason why in season 2 and 3 we do have the Professor and Marianne.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Keep an eye on the islands though throughout the shows there. Because when they were filming this, they used 3 different. They had 3 different pictures of like this. How you see the island in the background. They used 3 different islands for that.
Very cool. That'll be something great we can look for. And by the way, the island they used was called Coconut Island, and it does still exist. Okay, so here we are. We're going to continue now. Created and produced by the wonderful Sherwood Schwartz. And directed by John Rich. Like I read from the book, he directed a lot of the episodes from the first season. And here we have our writers. Let's hope we don't get a strike on this. And there you can see where the SS Minnow is now sitting in a different position than we saw in the beginning credits, which is totally fine.
Now here's a question. Those that big holes there on that small boat, I should have sunk right away. So unless they hit some rocks right when they beached, they should have been going down in the ocean.
There are some angles that they show where it is sitting next to some rocks. In fact, if you look at the title of our stream that I edited together, where it looks like you and I are sitting on an island, and if you look over, you'll see the minnow in the background, and there's two rocks sitting next to it. And those two rocks, I took them directly from the show with the ship. So I didn't put the ship in the shot and then add rocks. The rocks were part of the scene. Okay. And here's the skipper waking up. As you can see, it's the next day. The sun is up and he's drowsy. This is from the original unaired pilot. And I'm pausing it here because you'll see the original actors that were replaced. On the left up there, you'll see the brunette, who is now no longer in this episode, and the blonde, which they call Bunny, at the top center, who was also replaced. And you'll see the professor right above Skipper's head. You'll see the professor. He's asleep, but he's like in a reclining position, and he's got dark hair. He's the third person. So those three that are in the boat were the ones that were replaced. So Skipper is crawling out of the boat, and Gilligan is asleep there. Yeah. And this is where Skipper wakes up Gilligan. And Gilligan is still kind of drowsy. He hears Skipper calling for him, and he thinks the skipper is overboard, and he yells, "Man overboard!" And in panic, he jumps off the boat.
Oh.
Like such. Hopefully we don't get a strike. I should not keep repeating. And there's Skipper with his exasperated look.
Yeah.
And here you can see the skipper picking up Gilligan by his belt. And here's where they are dazed. And Gilligan says that he's just happy to be alive. I'm so happy I can kiss the ground. And then he says, "This dirt tastes terrible."
Yeah.
And then this is where Skipper realizes that they are way off course and they have no idea where they're at.
Now, here's a question.
Yes,
I'm not very familiar. They're using AM and that, but could the radio signals really travel that far?
Yeah. Maybe not.
Back in the 60s?
Maybe it depends on the strength of the transmitter, but possibly not. But you'll see here the boat is already in a different position. So this is 3 different positions we've seen. Because now you can see that the holes are facing towards the island, not out towards the open sea. And this is a shot here that was in the original unaired pilot with the other stars. So they basically reshot this and put the actors in the same place and replaced Marianne, Ginger, and the professor. And they're listening for information on the radio about the search team. And they're finding out the bad news that the search has been called off. And they do mention, which is not mentioned again in the entire series, that the skipper's name is Jonas Grumby. Each character is given their name and description and where they come from. And by the way, if anybody wonders the Howells, where they keep their money at, it's the First, Second, and Third National Bank. And you're possibly right. There's a lot of stretching of the imagination when it comes to that radio. You know, would it still work? It gets wet. Does it still work? And would it really receive reception that far? With this show, and considering it's a fantasy comedy, I guess we're going to probably have to bend the rules several times.
Yeah.
Here's another clip from the unaired pilot where Gilligan is fishing, except they reversed the footage, so now it's at a different angle. When we watched the unaired pilot last week, he was fishing from right to left, and now he's fishing from left to right.
Yeah. Did you get? Is this the one? Did they throw the radio out? I think they didn't throw the radio out this time, did they?
That's absolutely correct. They did not. That whole scene is not even in this. The scene with the radio and the fish swallowing the radio, all that is not even in this episode at all, and is never seen again.
Okay. Hey, we got quite a bit of chats here.
All right. Well, let me get to that then. Thank you. Thank you for reminding Gorilla. Let's see. Where did I leave off last time? There we are. Euler Greg says, perhaps a different dimension has a series with the original cast. As you say, probably only one season and forgotten. Casting is critical. I agree, and you never know. Maybe they would have done well, but I think we're so used to the people we have. I think it's kind of hard to imagine somebody else. And Order Greg says cruises were much cheaper than a charter trip in '97 in Cancun was $75, and it's 300 now. And I was there because a friend won the trip. Wow, that sounds nice. So it's possible poor people are on a trip.
Okay.
Skipper. And Order Greg says Minnow is a full-size yacht in the early '60s. And being on the sea in a storm is frightening in a small craft. Yeah, I would agree with that. And negative, the boat travels much faster than 1 mile per hour. My boats could do 40 miles per hour. I could be wrong when I looked it up. What did it say where I looked it up? It said one nautical mile per hour.
I asked
knot
how
equals,
fast a knot was, and that's 1 mile. So 1 knot's 1 mile per hour. That's not how fast we're saying the boat was.
Okay.
That's what he was getting at.
Okay, gotcha. And Order Greg says fishing boats of similar or smaller size, but add current speed and you can be swept far away. Yeah, that makes sense. And Order Greg says Russell Johnson was a small star. Oops, let me go back to that. Russell Johnson was a small star as well. He was in movies like Attack of the Crab Monsters. Yes, he was in a lot of movies. He was also in This Island Earth and many others. And originally, like the others, he thought that he was typecast after this show. He had trouble finding jobs. But they all realized later on, obviously, by the time they made Escape from Gilligan's Island, or Rescue from Gilligan's Island, they realized that these characters defined who they were. And they were able to attend conventions. And they pretty much embraced their characters, all except for Tina Louise. Order Greg says, I miss Bunny, bring in the new actors, but keep Bunny. Bunny was okay, but I'll take Marianne any day. Or Ginger. Order Greg says, don't be... I got it. Agorn. Like and subscribe. Thank you. I don't have mine on full screen, so I had to kind of squint to read this. And Order Greg says, thanks, says SJ. Okay. And here we are back to the review. And here's where they're deciding what they're going to do that evening. And Skipper's telling them that they've got to do something. They can't just stay there. And Mr. Halligan's upset because they switched off the radio just as they're getting ready to talk about the stock market like it really matters anymore.
Yeah. And welcome, Anti-Derivative Jill.
Welcome, Jill. Thank you for stopping by. I appreciate you being here.
And thanks for subbing Skojily Joe Dunn. Sorry if I butchered that.
Thank you. I hope you guys are enjoying this. And here's where we get an introduction to our characters. We got Marianne and Ginger, and now we're getting the wonderful Professor, Russell Johnson. And here's where it's getting later in that night. And they're still trying to decide what to do. The Howells don't quite realize the situation that they're in. The Howells think that they're still on vacation. They act a little aloof, but they're still dedicated. That's one thing you'll notice throughout this series is you think that the millionaires will automatically be the bad guys because they figure that they're above everybody else. But the Howells do actually get in and do their part and work. So I think that's one thing that makes this cast work too. So Skipper and Gilligan decide to build a raft and are going to try to head out and try to find civilization for rescue. So we have Gilligan makes a sign there, and they're putting it together using obviously beams and bamboo. And this is something you figure they would have tried several times throughout the episodes, but they just tried it at once. And this is where Professor tells them it will not work. You cannot escape on a raft like this. There are sharks out there, and that raft is not designed for the high seas. And Gilligan's having his doubts, so Gilligan takes the sign down, and Skipper says, no, you keep right on working. And we see here the girls are making a sail. I hope you don't mind me referring to them as the girls. I'm going to refer to the girls on here, the women on this show as the girls, and the men on here as the boys. So there's Gilligan noticing their sign, which they have hand sewn from their clothing they pulled from their luggage. And they spelled SOS using Gilligan's socks.
Where'd they get? I suppose. Never mind. I was gonna say maybe the Skipper had needle and thread on them.
You'll notice that they happen to have a lot of handy tools on them, and maybe they use a pine needle, right? But I don't know if there's pine trees on the island.
Yeah, well, needle thread's not too much out of the, or wouldn't be
Out of the
too much.
ordinary.
Yeah.
That's one thing in the interviews with Sherwood Schwartz is for the designers of the show, the prop makers and the set designers. He said, don't make anything that could not appear on the island. It has to be something that they could have brought themselves, or that they could only build on the island with tools on the island. So I thought that was very nice. So they actually had a blast building things on the show just to show the creativity of what they could do with bamboo and palm leaves. And here's Gilligan thanking them for the sail. Gilligan is licking the shellac for the ship. That's supposed to be the water sealer, but apparently it's made out of coconut, and he said it tastes delicious.
Yeah, but that'd wash right off with coconut sap and sugar.
Maybe once it hardens, it'll be okay if you let it cure. And this is where Skipper says, where's that sealant that the professor made? And then Gilligan says it was delicious. So even in the face of danger, Gilligan is not afraid to satiate his appetite. And here's where the professor basically says, I know you're going to go. I know I can't stop you, but just to let you know, I found this necklace here in a cave. And this could represent natives that we have to be watch out for. You watch out for basically he's telling them to watch out for the natives out there. And he's bringing him. What's that?
Is the Marubi.
The Marubi, right. And he also see he brings them a canteen of water. So I like the fact that the castaways come by, each one to say and do their thing. And Ola Greg says, hey, Jill. So we have Skipper and Gilligan getting ready to leave. I wish I could play verbatim of what they're saying, but I can't. And this is where Professor warns them that the headhunter, or he tells them that the natives could be dangerous. And Gilligan says, how? And he says, well, they hunt heads. And Gilligan doesn't like that.
Well, what they said is, what exactly are the Marubi? He says, they're collectors. Oh, what do they collect? Heads.
Heads, right. And here's where they have the raft assembled, and they're getting ready to take off. And the Howls stop by to give them notes, asking them to stop by some of their friends when they hit the land, and make plans for them, and a whole list of details. And the professor explained to them, we don't have time for that, no offense, but when we get there, our priority is to send help back for you guys. And the Howls are like, okay, that's understandable.
Yeah, it's a list of stocks for them to sell, buy, trade.
Stocks, right? That's all the Howls think about, right? And here's the saying goodbye, everybody. But the girls show up here. They made some homemade lays and gave them to them. And they give them goodbye kisses. And here's one of the few times you'll see Gilligan taking a kiss without it knocking him out. Because usually when Gilligan gets a kiss, he's overwhelmed. And I'm sure you all see that he swoons. And he usually falls, especially when it comes from Ginger.
I like the shot of Marion right here.
Yep. And I love the fact that it shows all the cats there to wish them good luck. And you can see their legs are made out of pineapple, of course. What else would come from an island? And Ginger is saying, give my best to all my friends in Hollywood. And they say, sorry, we won't have time. And here's where they're shoving off. And Skipper realizes the boat's not moving. And they're loading the last bit of things here. I think one of my slides was out of sequence. The boat's not moving, so they realize they forgot the anchor. So Gilligan comes to grab the anchor, and he follows the rat back out to the water, and they're saying good luck. And there's Gilligan, and they're shoving off, and Gilligan forgot to get onto the raft, and he's carrying the anchor with him. And they're all waving goodbye and saying goodbye. And there's Gilligan still not on the raft and still carrying the anchor, so he's staying on the bottom. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, I want to mention, he's probably on his knees at this point. This lagoon is not that deep. This is a man-made lagoon, and it was made in the parking lot of the studio. So those trees in the background, there's going to be some points in the series where you're going to see antennas and buildings and everything on the other side of those trees, if you look carefully. There was also a freeway with a bunch of cars. So sometimes they could not shoot during rush hour because the noise from the honking was too loud.
Yeah. Well, I got a question. Why would they even bother with an anchor? Like, they could just pull that raft right up on shore
Well, an anchor,
and
you
push
may
off.
need an anchor, right? But what if you want to stop and fish somewhere, right?
Yeah, but if they're going out in the ocean, the anchor wouldn't be long enough.
But you never know what you might end up with. You might end up on another island. I would have an anchor.
Oh,
Okay, so here's where they
seems
shove
like
off.
it'd be a little too much extra weight.
Well, it is extra weight. It's a bunch of rocks. I think I'll get rid of it if I need to.
Yeah.
As you can see, they're still in the lagoon, and this is where the professor realizes that Gilligan's underwater. I'm sorry, the skipper realizes that Gilligan's underwater, so he's pulling Gilligan up out of the water. And naturally, as we could expect, Gilligan pulls the skipper into the water. And there's Gilligan up and pulling the skipper back up onto the raft. And there's a shot. And if you look in the distance, you can see a boat. I don't know if they're assuming that's the raft or if that's another boat. But this is basically a shot to show us that time has passed since they left. And there they are on the raft. And it looks like time has passed, but they had not said exactly how much. And this is where Gilligan is explaining that he's hungry. They already had breakfast, they had lunch, and they had dinner, but he's still hungry. And by the way, he also ate the fruit from their leis.
Oh, don't forget he ate the shark repellent.
And he ate the shark repellent, right. Everything is delicious. Apparently, it's all made out of coconut and pineapple. I guess I don't blame them there.
Yeah,
and as you can see, they don't have a lot of supplies. What's that?
Well, you can tell Gilligan's not a picky eater.
Oh, no, he's not a picky eater. Definitely not. And here's where they spot a message in a bottle. And they pull the bottle up and they pull the message out. And Gilligan unravels the message and starts reading it and says that whoever wrote it misspelled maroon. And then Skipper says, that's your message.
Wait, so if he wrote the message, and how can you tell he misspelled maroon if he didn't know how to spell maroon?
Well, he says I always misspell that word. So maybe he misspells it a different way every time. I know if there's words that I use that I misspell, I know it if I'm not spelling them right. And here's where they notice sharks when they threw the bottle in the water, and they start panicking. So they're using their sticks there to ward off the sharks the best they can. I like the fact that they mix the stock footage in with the actual episode. It looks pretty smooth. I don't like the pixelization. This pixelization, you guys, I apologize for. Like I said, next week it'll be from the Blu-ray. It'll look a lot sharper. And there we are with the shark circling the raft. And they're using those sticks. And unfortunately, one shark took a bite out of Gilligan's stick. And they begin trying to hit the sharks. And another thing I wanted to point out is this is a sitcom. I'm sure we all understand it's a sitcom. What do you think the chances are these days of ever getting a sitcom with physical comedy and slapstick? I think that's one of the things that makes this really stand out and why it's so memorable.
Yeah, that's it's probably the only safe comedy anymore because no one wants to take risks no more.
Well, right. But even before all this happened, though, I mean, sitcoms have been just talking heads since, the 1970s? I don't think they've had any physical comedy in sitcoms ever since at least the 70s. It's just talking heads now. It's just, funny lines written on paper. There's no physical comedy.
Well, there might be a few shows.
Well, if there are that use physical comedy, I'd love to see them.
Was the Three Stooges 60s?
Three Stooges was 1930s, 40s, 50s, and 60s.
Oh, okay.
Right. And by the way, I'll be covering in future episodes that Skipper and Gilligan were inspired by Laurel and Hardy. And I will be covering them. That's a big influence on Sherwood Schwartz when he wrote this and he put these two together. So here we are, them fighting the sharks off, and one of the sharks takes a nice big chunk out of the raft, which I thought the effect was pretty good. It's not too bad. So essentially, these sharks are attacking this raft from all angles, and they're doing the best they can while panicking.
Yeah.
And they're also losing.
Would a shark actually eat bamboo though?
They've taken bites out of boats, so it's very possible. And
Okay.
bamboos are hollow.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I've ever heard of a boat getting bitten.
Yeah, they've bitten and attacked boats. They've bitten surfboards. People have had their surfboards bitten.
Well, I
And
can see surfboards, but it's just kind of like see. But if you notice though, every time they take a bite, it's always right where Gilligan's standing.
well, that's the stills. If you look, if I could play the video, the sharks do go around the boat and bite it from different angles. The only thing that kind of doesn't make sense that I had to mention is Gilligan pulls out his pocket knife and he starts cutting the rope that's holding those bamboo rods together. I don't know if he's thinking that the bamboo pieces are supposed to scare off the shark, but basically what it's doing is it's tearing the raft apart. And I don't know if Gilligan realizes that, but Gilligan's known for making mistakes. So the raft is getting smaller and smaller, and the skipper is trying the best he can to hold on. They even threw the sail out towards the sharks inexplicably. And so here we are after the shark attack, and the water is calm, and then suddenly we get into the storm. And rain. So it looks like they're stuck out in the rain on the raft. And now the water is too much for the raft, and apparently which causes it to sink. And they were able to swim aboard this island here.
Yeah.
And Gilligan says he was able to save the raft, even though he only has one bamboo in his hand. But he does have a box. Yes?
It would be a good thing if he still had his... he could really take care of the sharks if he still has gun from the first episode.
Right. Yeah, and the bullets, right? That's another thing. Yeah, thank you for reminding me, everybody. In the Unaired Pilot, Skipper actually had a gun. And it had one bullet, and Gilligan snuck up to him from behind and made him fire and waste the last bullet. But Gilligan had a box of dried bullets, but he actually dropped them into a fire, causing them all to shoot. So he had no more bullets, so no more gun. But here, Gilligan is happy, and he's saying, look, I had matches on, I kept them dry because they're both cold and wet. So Gilligan decides we better make a fire. So Skipper stacks the wood and tells Gilligan to bring over that fire. And Gilligan, instead of dropping the fire onto the wood, he hands it to the skipper. And the skipper's like, what are you doing that for? And the skipper puts the fire down and places it on the sticks.
Okay, here's a question. Why wouldn't they just light it over here instead of having him carry a burning log all the way that far where it possibly could go out?
For the joke?
Oh.
I think they're trying to assume that Gilligan's using kindling, like dried weeds and stuff to start the fire.
Yeah.
But you're right. Logically, he would have carried those over to where the stack of wood was and then started everything at the same time. So I think they did that kind of as a joke. And remember now, let's keep in mind, Gilligan is absent-minded.
Yeah. Well, I'm just pointing out the flaws in the logics here.
That's fine. That's fine.
Oh.
I think maybe these days they might classify Gilligan with a learning disability. I don't know, but I wouldn't say that. Gilligan always had the best intentions, regardless of his mistakes. And here they are building the fire up, and Skipper is freezing, and Marianne and Ginger and the professor notice that they see fire coming from the, quote, other side of the island. They see smoke right there above the trees.
Well, that's because Gilligan put ferns on there instead of actual wood.
Right, you put green ferns down there, which cause it to smoke, and possibly even put out the fire. And then this is when Skipper and Gilligan notice all the footprints.
Yep. Okay, we got 6 chats here.
Okay. Let's get up with those. Thank you, Gorilla. And Oiler Greg says, nice raft. I could float down my local river in that, loaded with beer and snacks. That sounds like a great day to spend. And Oiler Greg says, a sea anchor can slow your craft at sea. There are different types and reasons to use one. That kind of makes sense, too, if you want to slow down. Order Greg says, nice outfit, Marianne. Oh, yeah,
No,
a
he
lot of
agrees
people
with
like your outfit.
he agrees with me.
Order Greg says, I'm looking forward to Blu-ray. It sounds awesome. Yes, I promise next week, like I said, everybody, these images will be much sharper and clearer. Good point, pop culture. No physical comedy or opening song possible currently. They will return, but the show isn't possible without them. I totally agree. That's another thing, is they don't have the opening songs or anything for your shows anymore, which I truly miss. I wish they would give them a little more effort, a little more time. And I Derivative Jill says there were tons of 90s shows with physical comedies, or at least on Nickelodeon, kids shows that I watched. Kramer from Seinfeld, Ace Ventura. I'm sure there are many more examples of 90s slapstick. Kramer, Seinfeld, and Ace Ventura were sitcoms. I'm not sure. It's possible. I'm aware of the Kramer from Seinfeld. I'm aware of Seinfeld. I'm aware of Ace Ventura. Okay.
Well, there's that 70s show too, but
The 70s show, was there?
I'm not sure how much slapstick was in there.
I don't think I watched that. So if there was, yeah, let me know. Feel free to mention it in the comments, everybody.
Yeah, I've
Okay.
only watched a couple episodes of it, so I can't really tell you that much.
Yeah, and the most I know one of the actors is going through court right now for some bad things that he did.
Oh, that's every show now.
Yeah, you're right about that. Here's where Skipper and Gilligan realize that there are footprints. And they're guessing that maybe the footprints are from the natives. So basically, Gilligan and the Skipper are on one side of the same island, not realizing that it's the same island. And here we are with the Professor, Marianne, and Ginger on the other side, seeing the smoke. And the Professor hands them conch shells and tells them to signal each other with these shells. This is kind of a mention from the book and movie Lord of the Flies. From Lord of the Flies, they use these conch shells a lot. But from my recollection, I don't think we're going to see them in any future Gilligan's Island episodes. I think it's just this one.
Well, yeah, that'd be a great movie for Sundays.
Which would?
Lord of the Flies. I'll have to think of a couple more for along the same theme though.
All right, and there's a couple of them, so I recommend the original first. I'm always a fan of originals.
No, but what I'm saying is like I'm gonna start doing monthly themes for movies there, so I'd have to find like a theme that fit into along with like 3 other movies.
Well, yeah, we'll just use a castaway theme. You know, stranded on desert island or stranded. So you could show the 2 movies that I had. 5 came back from eternity. You could show Lord of the Flies. You could show Castaway. And there's a really good movie which I'll look up afterwards, with starring Lee Marvin and the famous Japanese actor. His name escapes me right. Toshiro Mifune. Where they're on an island and they have to become friends. So there's enough movies there where you could fill that up for an entire month if you wanted to. I can help you come up with ideas.
Okay, that sounds like an April thing.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, so here we have the Skipper and Gilligan looking at the footprints, and they're thinking maybe those are the natives that the Professor has warned them about. And as you can see, the Howells are not too concerned with the danger, as Mr. Howell is already playing golf, and the Professor runs in with conch shells. And he hands the shells to them and explains to them about warning each other and use them as warning signs. And they're handing each one of them a shell. And of course, the Howells are confused because they've never heard of that. They blow the shells to test them out. I don't know why we're getting this. I apologize. They blow the shells to test them out. And Skipper and Gilligan hear the shells and then panic. So this is when Skipper tells Gilligan we better hide and camouflage ourselves. So as you can see here, they're starting to shove leaves and plants down Gilligan's back, and he's laughing because I believe it's tickling.
Yeah. And welcome LDG, hashtag free the net.
Hello, LDG. Good to see you. This cave that the Professor finds with Ginger, we will see pop up in more episodes of Gilligan's Island.
Yeah.
And this is where they decide that they want to hide from the supposedly natives. So the professor notices that that's when he sees the rocks above the cave, and he thinks that he can create a booby trap.
Yeah. How the hell did those rocks stay up there like that? They will have caved in by now. Like
Maybe there
that
was
from
like a
years of weathering and storms.
well, maybe there was like a rock slide above and they fell, but that's the point where they stopped. They could have showed a few more rocks on the ground, making it look like a few rocks had fell. But right now, I think as it stands, the floor area is clean.
Yeah.
So here's where they decide that they see the rocks above the cave. Gilligan and Skipper are in full disguise as a bush, a fat bush, according to Gilligan, and a tree trunk. And they're trying to hide, and they're covering. There's a rope on the ground there that they're going to use for the trap. And as you can see, they're running the trap along the ground, up along the side of the cave, and to the top where the rocks are. And Ginger, this is an example of what I was talking about. Now remember, Ginger at this point is a fancy movie star, but she's actually down there working, getting her hands dirty to help build this trap with the professor. And this is what I liked from the very beginning. This show established that it didn't matter what their backgrounds were, they were not afraid to get their hands dirty and pitch in and help. And this is where Gilligan has a little visitor of a woodpecker pecking on the side of his head.
Yeah, no bird would have even gotten close and stayed there if the tree started moving or talking to it.
I guess it thought that Gilligan's head was made out of wood.
Yeah, but as soon as you say something, that bird would take it off. Like, oh
Right.
shit, this tree's talking to me.
Right. So Gilligan and Skipper are panicking, trying to hide, and the professor and Ginger see them at a distance and think that they're the natives, of course. So each side thinks that the other side are the natives at this point.
Yeah.
So this is where the professor and Ginger go to get the rest of the castaways to tell them about the cave. And as they're gone, Skipper and Gilligan run across the very same cave. And then Gilligan comes up with the wonderful idea, hey, couldn't we set a trap? We could use this rope right here on the ground, run it along the ground, up along the side, up to the top, right where those rocks are, and use them as a trap. And Skipper first says, well, that's a dumb idea, but then realizes that's a wonderful idea. That's absolutely perfect.
Yeah. And see, if he thinks it's the Marubi, they would know that trap's there, so there's the flaw in Skipper's logic there.
Right. Well, it's something I think that they're trying to put together really quickly. They don't have time to add more dress to it because they think the Marubi are closing in on them. So I think they just throw a few leaves down. And here's where Skipper and Gilligan run into the cave. They step carefully over the rope and run into the cave to hide.
Yeah.
And shortly after they're in the cave is where we get the other castaways, the professor bringing them to come and hide in the cave.
Yeah. Oh, Jill named off a few more shows that has the slapstick.
Perchance. Order Greg says, props to Ginger for supporting an evening dress in her survival situation and making it work every week. Absolutely, and still have a smile on her face. LDG says, clap, clap. Anti-derivative Jill says, hey, LDG, free the net.
Yeah, I think that's a wave.
Anti-derivative. Oh, okay, gotcha. Hello, LDG. Good to see you, sir. Anti-derivative Jill says, home improvement. Tons of slapstick every episode. 90s sitcom. I am aware of the show, Jill. I did not know it had slapstick. That's excellent. I will check that out. And Third Rock from the Sun. I know that's the one with John Lithgow, I believe.
Yeah.
So I love these references. I will check these shows out. If they have physical humor, I'm definitely into that.
Yeah, Home Improvement. That's a good one. That had Tim Allen in it.
And that was on for a long time, right?
I don't know how long it's been. It was on the air. That's the one with Wilson, but they've only showed his face one time in that show.
The guy behind the fence.
Yeah.
But I know that's the show that made Tim Allen a household name pretty much because he was a stand-up comedian before that, right?
Yeah. He still
Right.
did. He did a bunch of movies too.
After, weren't they after or before or during?
After and I think maybe one or two
During.
before.
Or during? And a Toy Story, that's one of his movies too.
Yeah,
Euler
Wild
Greg says,
Hogs.
true, Jill, but there are any current slapstick comedies? I think that's what Pop meant. And our derivative Jill says that Euler Greg, I would agree with you, except he specifically said they ended in the 70s. Well, I could be wrong, Jill. I didn't know they had any physical comedy, but I have not seen those shows that you referenced. And Euler Greg says, great list of shows, though, Jill. And by the way, I do make mistakes. I'm not perfect. So I do encourage my fellow panelists, Gorilla, or anybody in the chat to please correct me at any time if I make a mistake on anything.
Yeah.
And Euler Greg says, yes, he did. And Anna Real Jill says, thank you, Euler Greg. Okay. So here we have our castaways heading into the cave. We have the millionaires, and then followed by the professor.
And notice they're always referencing, don't trip over the rope. Oh, don't always trip over the rope. So
Right, they're saying, right, watch out for the rope, watch out for the rope. So everybody carefully steps over the rope not to trigger the trap.
Yeah, you keep hearing that every single time you see that rope there, so you know what's going to happen.
Right. So once they go, it's hard to, this is something we cannot relay with a slideshow. But once they go into the cave, you can hear a struggle ensue. And you can hear punches flying and people's voices and exclamations. And basically like the sound of a barroom brawl. And as this is happening, we see, this is something I really love too, that Alan Hale Jr. was full 100% with the physical humor. I mean, the guy had a big body, but he was never, ever afraid to take pratfalls. And I really loved him for that. So through this struggle inside the cave, the skipper comes flying out, rolling on the ground. He gets up, as you can see there, and he decides that he's not going to leave his little buddy in there. He runs in there, and then Mr. Howell is the next one to come tossing out there. So once again, proof that the Howells are no cowards. So you can see that Mr. Howell is actually says, he's basically concerned about the other castaways. So does he stay outside like a coward? No, he doesn't. Mr. Howell heads right back in there into danger, which I think is exceptional and would not be true these days, obviously. And the next thing you know, we have Gilligan and the professor come running out of there. And then they realize what's going on and that they're both on the same island. And that's when they say, we got to get in there and stop them from fighting. So the professor runs in and says, watch out for that rope. And so Gilligan says, yeah, I know. And you see the professor heads back in there to stop the scuffling and the barroom brawl pretty much. And Gilligan's standing there listening to the fight, gets excited, and decides to run in there. And as he does, he, of course, triggers the trap. And as he triggers the trap, all the rocks come down, sealing off the entrance to the cave. And the first we have here is the skipper crawling out, followed by the professor. Now that they all realize what has happened. And there we have Marianne, poor Marianne. So dirty, and her hair's all messed up. And Ginger is saying that her only dress is torn.
Yeah, it knows for his hand. It knows for the skipper's hands every time he pulled Marianne and Ginger out. Where his hands ended up.
But I don't think that he meant anything intentionally because of that.
I'm not saying it was intentional. That's just one thing I noticed is where his hand ended up at.
Right. And as we can see here through thick and thin, Mrs. Howell is not going to lose that umbrella.
Yeah.
And we have wonderful Mr. Howell coming out looking a little shaken up, as we can see. And when they get out, they're concerned about Gilligan. But when they turn around, this is what they see. And this is where the skipper is frightened. And they all run away. And there they are, panicking and taking off.
That'd be worth an ass whooping or two.
Yep. And here's the native comes out, turns around, and we find out it's Gilligan. Just playing a practical joke on them.
Yeah.
And so we have the ending credits. So here's where we have credit to Russell Johnson and Don Wells.
Yeah.
So in the first season, they get the credits at the end But in the second and third season, they will get credit at the beginning, which is, I think, an improvement too.
Yeah. This is like one of the few shows that actually has a song at the end of the show, too.
Yes, and it's a different one than the one at the beginning.
Yeah. But I think if you go on Google there and you type in like the theme song, there's quite a few people who combine both parts.
Well, and there's different theme songs. So the theme songs that we're hearing here during the first season is going to be different than the one we see later on, where they're sitting on the beach and it's sunny in color.
Yeah.
And also the Wellingtons, the people that are singing, the group that is singing the theme song, will be replaced by a different band as well. And as you can see here, I wanted to point out, as there's the art director, the film editor, assistant director, set decorator, and below that it shows the copyright, which you guys can all see the Roman numerals. And the company that produced it is called Gladysea, which is a play on the term of glad to see ya, which was owned by the production company, was owned by Bill Silvers from the people, if anybody knows Sergeant Bilko, the guy with the glasses, and he was like a gambler shyster, but he owned a production company and he called it Glad to See Ya. So that's the production company of Gilligan's Island.
All right.
And that's the completion of the first episode of Gilligan's Island. And I'll take that opportunity to get caught up on the chats. You're doing great at pop culture. Oh, Anna Derivative Jill, thank you. I'm nervous, and I think it's going better than last week. I feel bad that I accidentally took DVD snapshots instead of the Blu-ray ones, so I feel terrible about the pixelation and the blurring on the photos. But like I said, they will improve everybody next week, I promise. And I really appreciate your chats, everybody, and your input. That's making this a whole lot better. And Euler Greg says, not perfect, unacceptable, nomad would sterilize, imperfection. Yes, I totally agree. And Derivative Jill says, at Euler Greg, laughing. Euler Greg says, unless Kirk can distract Nomad with a logic trap, absolutely. Only Kirk can do that. And Euler Greg says, Gilligan demanded equal billing for all cast members. Yes, which I give him credit for. That was very nice. And of him being the star of the show, had the clout to do that. So we're all lucky for that all these years later. And I'm sure you all know, the fellow castmates were also happy about that as well.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, just as a reminder, there is I believe I put a poll in the chat for you guys to vote if you would like to on episodes. Which one we usually like when Jill and I do our streams, we have a rating system from A to D, but it's difficult to do that with two different episodes. So the options in the poll are going to be which episode you like best. So if you liked them at all, if not, let us know. I also put that option in the poll. Gorilla, do you have any comments to bring before I get to the next episode?
Well, that episode, I'll give it a high B+, low A-. I mean, there's a little bit of some of the humor was very predictable in that, and I mean, it was really good though. But some of the humor was a little bit predictable. Some of the stuff didn't make sense, but you're not expected to make it make sense. So that's why I didn't get it. That's why it gets as high a score.
I appreciate at least you didn't give it an F, so I'm glad I was able to change your mind.
Yeah.
And for those of you in the chat, if you want to give the episodes a rating, like from A to F or from 1 to 10, feel free to do that. If you leave a rating in the chat, I will share that with everybody on the stream. You're welcome to rate it any way you would like. And Oleg Greg says, I voted twice in honor of our president. But according to him, he only voted once because he forgot the first time. Euler Greg says, sorry for politics. I take shots at both sides. That is absolutely fine, Euler.
Well, okay. Was there politics?
No, he was joking. He was joking about the president, I believe. Okay, so now we are going to get into Gilligan's Island episode 2, Home Sweet Hut. Now, if you guys were here last week and you noticed the references, like, I'm going to bring this up a couple times. The two movies that I referenced, which I believe were influenced by Gilligan's Island, or they were influenced, in those movies, they showed the people band together and build huts. So you're going to see scenes mirrored in this episode that are almost exact. There we go. Here we are with episode 2. And I'm just stopping for a moment to make sure you see this all right. Yes, and you're doing me a favor.
Yeah.
If we lose picture or they can't see or any technical things like that, I appreciate if you could bring it to my attention.
Yeah, your mic's
Because sometimes I'm juggling moves.
Yeah, I was just about to mention
Okay.
your mic just started cutting out a tiny bit. I'm not sure if you're wiggling a wire or anything, but it also could be on my end.
No, it's on. Here's what happened on my end. I closed one video and I opened another, and that I've noticed that sometimes will cause my mic to do this, and I think it's because of the RAM on my laptop. I need to expand the RAM. So
Okay,
this is our
okay.
this is our second episode, Home Sweet Hut, and the reason why I bring this up and I wanted to highlight this was it's directed by Richard Donner. It's the famous Richard Donner, the one we all know who directed Superman, the Lethal Weapon movies, The Goonies, among many other things. That's right. This is directed by the same man who directed The Goonies.
Hey, you guys!
Right. You know, in a way, when you look at The Goonies, if you think about it, you can see kind of some similarities with Gilligan's Island.
Well,
the
with
humor
the
and
Goonies
the style.
I noticed that they did Stranger Things kind of like that resemble the Goonies, only a lot, it's supposed to be a lot more like on the horror side instead of the comedy side.
Yes. You know, The Goonies was a surprising phenomenon. It's very popular and it's definitely generational because even kids have seen it. I think it's an excellent movie.
Well, that's because everybody loves Sloth, especially when he goes, "Hey, you guys!" That's like the one thing everybody knows about it. If you say
Right.
that's like there's a thing going around Facebook there that says name a line from a movie that fans would recognize the movie instantly, and that's like the one line everybody would recognize is The Goonies.
Ooh, I wanted to say really quick, Hakeem, welcome to the show and good night. He says, I'm going to bed, but wanted to say I really enjoyed these reviews. I started to go back and watch Honeymooners. Thank you, Hakeem. I appreciate that. And then Honeymooners is also excellent.
Welcome, Hakeem.
Yep, welcome and have a great night.
Yeah.
Now, let me see if I can kind of get back where I was in the chat. I don't want to skip anybody.
Yeah. I think we already did that.
All hail a glorious leader, whoever, LOL. And Orla Greg says, no one can see me. And Orla Greg says, he's definitely wiggling a wire. It could be. I have poodles, and they keep trying to get up on my lap. And I have my laptop here, and when they do, it causes the wires to move around. So like every 5 minutes, my little dog Romeo is trying to get up my lap. I have to pick him up and get him out of the way. That could be the noise as well.
No, I noticed it when as soon as you pointed out the VLC player open and close. I was like, oh, okay. It was when you're opening and close, going to this one.
That also happens, yeah.
Yeah.
And Orla Greg, or Hakeem says he's going to bed, or he or she, sorry about that. Orla Greg says, wow, a huge director. I didn't know that. Nice trivia. And Jill says, good night, Hakeem. And Orla Greg says, good night, Hakeem. Okay, so here we go, continuing. Episode 2, Home Sweet Hut. And here we are sitting on the beach of the lagoon, and Skipper is cooking. So he's got some pineapple there and other things. And he's singing to himself. And this is where Gilligan says, usually when I come here, you tell me to shut up and sit down. And the Skipper says, why would I ever do that? I would never do that to you, buddy, little buddy. And if I ever do, you let me know. And here's where the Howls come along and they smell the food and they say, that smells wonderful. And Gilligan says, yes, it does. And then Skipper says, shut up and sit down immediately to Gilligan. So here's where we get our introduction to the cast for the week. And as you can see, they already have a different wardrobe that they managed to save. And we get a sudden storm and a pour of rain.
Yeah, that
And I
rain
think
wouldn't have started that fast, though.
on a tropical island, you never know, but it's possible, right? Or at least they should get more cloud cover. But what
Well,
I
it would
thought
have
was,
started slowly, then gradually built up. Like, yeah, they mentioned they felt a couple sprinkles, but then all of a sudden, there's a sudden downpour. Like, it will have
right,
taken a minute or two to at least get up to that.
right. First, Gilligan says that he felt a drop of water on his nose. And then Skipper denies it and says, oh, no, everything's fine. And then next thing you know, we get this outpour. And something I want to point out, too, that unfortunately I noticed in a lot of television and movies, that as the rain pours, if you look in the background, you can see it's raining in the background. And it's raining on the water in the background. A lot of times in movies and TV shows, because they're using fake rain, you got to remember, they're using like sprinklers overhead. And a lot of times in movies and television, when it's raining on the main cast who are up front in the foreground by the camera, you can easily look beyond them in the background and see no rain and tell that they're standing under a shower. That happens a lot in the movies and TV, unfortunately. But I like the fact that they went to the effort of actually having enough water covering this area to cover where they are standing on the beach and the lagoon, which had to be an incredible amount of water for a Los Angeles soundstage. And unfortunately, Skipper is still trying to cook, but his pan is now full of water. And as you can see, the water put the fire out, and Skipper's huddling under the umbrella with Mr. and Mrs. Howell. And Skipper realizes that his dinner is a wash.
Yeah.
And the next day is where he thanks Mr. Howell for letting all of the castaways borrow clothing from their suitcases.
Okay,
so that's why you see them. Go ahead.
Here's a really good question. So
Yes,
it's be expected that Gilligan and the skipper would have a bunch of clothes on. Maybe they lived on the ship or something, so they didn't have to pay rent or anything. But why would the Howells carry that much clothes with them for a 3-hour tour?
maybe they were going to go. Maybe they were going to go somewhere afterwards.
And why would Mrs. Howell have a second umbrella with her? Because the first one was destroyed.
Well, I'm not really too sure, but don't usually a lot of times women have different colored accessories with their garments to match whatever they're wearing.
But why would she carry with them for a 3-hour tour?
Well, that's what I'm saying. What if they had planned on going somewhere after the tour? Like on vacation or something?
Oh, I thought they were on vacation already.
Well, a 3-hour tour is not much of a vacation, but like I said, we will be covering the letter written by the fan that was sent to Bob Denver that he likes to believe explains the reason that brought all these together and all these people together and why and what they have, which, like I said, I will be covering. So here we are. The skipper is thanking them for letting everybody use the Howell clothes because all their clothes are wet. And that's why Skipper is in a and it's fantastic though. We're lucky for fantasy that Skipper is actually able to fit into Mr. Howell's clothing at this point. But this is why we have Marianne dressed the way she is, and Ginger's in Mrs. Howell's mink coat, and the professor is in his smoking jacket. And they have Skipper has Gilligan drying their clothes. So Gilligan has built a fire over there, and the only way he knows to dry their clothes, because they don't have a clothesline, is to put each clothing. He asks the skipper, he goes, how do I dry these? And the skipper says, use your head. So Gilligan puts on Ginger's dress.
Hey, look, it's Klinger.
It's Klinger from MASH, right? 10 years before MASH. So this is where Gilligan tells them, this is the only way I know how to dry the clothes. So they're like, okay, sure, whatever works, as long as it works. And this is where Skipper is telling them that storm taught them a lesson, and that what they need to do is band together and build a hut. So the skipper has worked out plans to build one large communal hut for everybody. The Howells are nonplussed about that. They're not too happy. They think they should be able to have their own separate place. But when Skipper explained to them they don't have the resources or the time for that, they agreed that yes, they will all be staying in one hut together. On the ground there, unfortunately, I have to explain this with still images. On the ground there, as you can see, Skipper's plans for the hut. And Gilligan brings over the dry clothes, and he's now wearing Marianne's dress. And I have to say, he does not look as good in that dress as Marianne does. And there he is. He does a little curtsy. Isn't that nice? As long as he's curtsied. He's got skinny legs. And when the Skipper mentions that they have to build the hut, the first thing the Howls do is exit stage left because they feel that they're above this. But I'm mentioning that because that does not last for long. They do pitch in. And there is the Gilligan wearing the Skipper's clothing. Now he's got it all nice and dry.
Yeah. Well, the Howls wanted to build their own hut up on the hillside looking down on everybody. Junior and Marianne wanted to build it on the beach and all that. The professor wanted to go off on his own there.
Right. Howls seem to be a little complacent sometimes. I think they forget where they are. It hasn't quite kicked in yet.
Which I don't see why they didn't sleep on the boat, though. Like, granted, there's holes in the boat, but they would have been covered during the weather if they would have just slept on the boat. Down below.
I hear werewolves. And Ola Greg says, awesome fur coat. Oh, absolutely. Back in the days when they were real fur, right?
Yeah, they said that's the new water-resistant fur or something like that.
Oh, okay. I apologize for the noise. We have a van parked across the street. The alarm goes off every time somebody walks by, and they have the sensitivity turned up way too high.
It sounds like someone smacks the van every time they walk past it just to set it off.
Nope. I've seen the van. I've been out there. And all it takes is for someone to pass by and the alarm goes off. So whoever owns that van is very rude because that can be adjusted. And apparently whoever they are, they don't care.
Well,
and it does it at all times of the night, by the way.
Well, why don't you talk to them?
I don't know whose van it is.
No.
I will if I ever see whoever it is walking up to it or leaving it. Right, but I've only seen it parked out there.
Yeah, leave a note on it.
I have a lot of Hispanic neighbors, so I better write it in both languages, right?
Yeah, you put it in English, they'll figure it out.
Here we have the castaways banding together to build a hut. So they agree to build one communal hut. So we have the professor working on the roof, and we have Skipper working on the interior, and Mr. Howell is working on. He has water sealant. So you'll see Mr. Howell has a paintbrush, and that bucket hanging above his head has got waterproofing sealant on it. So it's a good thing they thought of that.
Yeah, well, why would he put the sealant above his head there? You think he'd put it on the ground in front of him, so you just have to reach in with the brush down instead of reaching up.
Well, that would be practical, but if I was in the same boat as Mr. Howell, or in the same position as Mr. Howell, I would probably hang it up there too, so people wouldn't accidentally kick it over. If that was their only bucket they had, and it's not easy to make that stuff, I would probably do that to keep it off the ground as well, so someone doesn't actually step on it. Oh. Especially it being right in front of that door there, where everybody's walking in and out.
Yeah, I will put it on the ground right next to me, you know.
Or maybe on the opposite side, maybe on Mr. Howell's right side, right?
Yeah.
But then we wouldn't be setting up the gag. Everything's fine until Gilligan comes along, of course. What a surprise. Gilligan has water. And as you can see, Skipper is standing on top of a water barrel. So it's a good thing they were able to either build one or manage to find one, right? Yeah. So Gilligan brings those 2 buckets of water, which he's using to fill up that rain barrel, which will be their water to survive by.
Yeah. No, well, the water barrel, I can see that them having that on the ship because, you know, you can't drink the salt water. So you got to have fresh water when they're out on the sea. Oh.
Yep.
I'll be right back.
No problem. And Orla Gregg says, vowels are correct. Live your best life no matter your circumstances. Orla Gregg says howls. Yeah, there we go. That makes a little more sense. Yes. See, that's just it. As we see here in the last scene, Mr. and Mrs. Howell left when they heard about physical labor. But as you can see, Mr. Howell got into it. He's happy. He's smiling. He's got his little drink right there. He's not complaining. And I do admit they don't show Mrs. Howell getting her hands dirty. But perhaps Mr. Howell volunteered to do the work for both of them.
Yeah,
so I do appreciate. Oh, no problem. I do appreciate that the Howells, in their way, are pitching in. And this is where Gilligan, unfortunately, with that pole that's on his shoulder, is turning around and knocking everything around on the inside of the hut. And he unfortunately even knocks down part of the roof there that they've been building. Yeah. And as you can see, the skipper is exasperated. And just as the skipper was telling Gilligan, be careful, this is my only dry clothes, Gilligan dumps this bucket of water on him, of course.
I still don't see why he's carrying it like that on his shoulders. Wouldn't it just be easy to carry it by the handles of the buckets?
You could do that, but people have carried them on poles like that before.
Yeah. I don't know. It just seems like it's a lot of extra work for the same thing.
It would, but it would be less work on your arms if you're putting the weight on your back. If you're using your arms, you're going to get tired after a while, right? Your arms will get tired. But if you're putting the weight on your back, you're not really, I think it's saving your arms possibly. Maybe that's the reason why they do it, but that's just a guess. So, of course, Gilligan's wreaking havoc inside the hut. And as he turns around, he knocks part of the roof loose. And unfortunately, what he happens to do is the skipper falls into the barrel of water. And Gilligan grabs the ladder, which was leading against the hut, not realizing the professor was standing on the ladder. The professor falls to the ground. And Gilligan has got the ladder, and he's going to take it inside so the skipper can get out of the barrel. And as he does that, he knocks the bucket of shellac over Mr. Howell's head. And Mr. Howell draws a little mustache on Gilligan and takes a sip from his drink. So as we can see, Mr. Howell took it quite well. So I do like that. Lots of patience, lots of patience. And Gilligan takes the ladder back into the hut to help the skipper, but instead of doing that, traps the skipper with the ladder by the neck and knocks down the rest of the hut pretty much. As you can see, because now they're standing out in the middle, in the open, so I think the hut is, well, they're going to have to start over, unfortunately. The skipper's not too happy, so Gilligan runs away, and the skipper's chasing after him. And there's Skipper chasing after Gilligan. And they do speed the film up a little bit here. Kind of a little chase scene. And they both end up falling in the water.
Yes.
And there they are coming out of the water. And there we are, the first evening in their huts. Or the hut, as I should say, one hut. So they're all having to make the best of it in that small, confined area. And this is our first time we see Gilligan and Skipper using hammocks. And the first of many times where we're going to see Gilligan falling out of the top hammock and landing on Skipper. And this is another example of, I'm glad at the point that I'm glad that the actors were doing the stunts themselves. It was hilarious. And it was great for Alan Hale Jr. to allow these stunts to happen, especially for Bob Denver to fall on him repeatedly like this. So this is where they're struggling back and forth. And Gilligan keeps falling onto the Skipper. And at a certain point, Skipper says, I'll get on top and you get on the bottom. So Skipper tries to get on top. There he is, making himself comfortable. Gilligan down below. But as he does, unfortunately, the top hammock starts slipping down.
Yeah, later on, they get better hammocks, don't they?
They do build better hammocks, yes. This is because they threw them together at the last minute. So the hammock slid down. As you can see, it's kind of crushing Gilligan. Gilligan's asking for help, but the Skipper doesn't hear him. But suddenly we hear arguments from the Howl erupt from the house side of the hut. They begin arguing, and that wakes up the skipper. And the skipper realizes that Gilligan is down below, grasping for air, pretty much. And Skipper calls everybody out from behind the curtains. And first one's out is Mr. Howell, and he's explaining that him and Mrs. Howell are arguing. And Skipper asks him, "Do you argue like this every night?" And they say, basically, yes, they do. But it's not a recurring thing we will see in the series. And the professor comes out from behind his blanket and says, "What's going on?" And Ginger does the same. She comes out and says, "Why is everybody arguing?" At this point, everybody's upset. As you can see, even by the look on Skipper's face, he's like, "You guys should not be arguing. We're all in one place. We're going to have to learn to live together." But at this point, everybody's upset. You will notice that this first season is a little more serious than seasons 2 and 3. So you might see a little drama. You might see a little bit of emotions popping up in these early episodes that we won't see later on. Because from what I remember, later on in the series, we don't usually see them get angry at each other. But it doesn't last. And here's where Marianne and Ginger says, we don't want the noise, we're trying to sleep. And the Howells are arguing back, saying they have the right to argue anytime they want to. They are the Howells after all. And Marianne and Ginger say, "Fine, and we're going to leave, and we're going to build our own hut. And we're going to take the walls that we built." So Marianne and Ginger built the walls for this hut. And the professor says, "Fine, then I'm going to take the roof that I built." So the professor built the roof. So all of them decide they're going to leave and build their own huts because they don't want to be in one together. And Skipper is lamenting that, unfortunately. And as we can see here, Mr. Howell come back. They had all left. And Mr. Howell came back and was surprised. He didn't think Skipper and Gilligan were still awake. But they were. And the reason why Mr. Howell came back is because he forgot his little teddy. And I wanted to point out something. The actor Jim Backus actually kept that teddy bear, even after the show went off the air. So even after the show went off the air, there are interviews. He would do television interviews. I have one that I'll be sharing with everybody from the 1980s, where he did an interview in LA, and he had that very same teddy bear. So not only did he embrace the character, he loved it, and he even kept that teddy bear with him, which he called Teddy, by the way. And this is the end of the first night. So here we are the next day, and they all decide they're going to be building their own huts. So what we see here will be the Gilligan and Skipper's hut. And Gilligan's working on the kitchen. And Skipper brings him some supplies, and Gilligan has the blueprints in his hands. And the problem is that Skipper asks Gilligan where are all the tools at, but he says that the other castaways keep borrowing the tools, which is making it more difficult for him to build. And Skipper says, "Do not loan out any more tools. If anybody comes and asks, you tell them no, 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 no." And the skipper leaves, and Gilligan continues the work sawing. And when Mr. Howell comes and he's poking and prodding, and he asks for supplies as well. And then, of course, Ginger comes and uses her charm to ask for something from Gilligan, it doesn't take much for Gilligan to buckle under. And he asks her what she needs, and she needs 9 feet of rope. So here's where she said, "Just a little teensy-wincy piece of rope." And he said, "How teensy-weensy?" And she said, 9 feet. She tried to give him a kiss, but he buckled backwards and swooned. And here's where he measures the rope. That beam is 6 feet. So he measures the rope at 1.5 the length of that beam, and he chops the rope with an axe. Unfortunately, doing so causes that beam to cut in half. And that's when Gilligan realizes that was a center beam for the hut and was supposed to support their hut, and he thinks the skipper's going to be upset when he sees that it's going to be a 3-foot high hut. And there we have our 2 pieces. And the skipper comes back and says, "You know what, Gilligan, never mind. I want you to take that 6-foot beam and cut it in half." So Gilligan's like, "Oh, thank goodness." He just happened to do that. So he hands the skipper the 2 pieces and says, "Here you go." And Skipper says, "That's fantastic. How did you do it so fast?" And here's Gilligan fumbling to try to go back to work again. And Skipper's excited. Everything's looking great. And he's giving Gilligan more orders, and he's going off to get more supplies. And he says, "Don't give any more tools out, no matter what happens." And the professor is writing a book of the stories on the island. He decides he's going to start keeping a chronology of everything that happens. And Order Greg says, "Great episode, good stream. Thank you, Order Greg. I hope to improve on the picture quality and the narration." Gorilla, do you have anything you want to add? I don't want to be just talking over you.
Oh, no. I was waiting for this scene to come up here.
Okay, so this is the professor in the hut that he built. So Gilligan knocks on the door, and he says hello to the professor. And the professor is writing the book. Gilligan comes in. Gilligan is admiring the work, and he pulls one pin out of the wall, and the entire left-hand wall of the hut falls. And the professor is upset. He says, "How could you do that? I built these walls strong." And the professor, to show Gilligan how strong the walls are, pulls on the wall on the right-hand side. You can see the wall right next to Gilligan. The professor pulls on it, and it stays solid. And the professor says, "See, there, I told you." And the Gilligan says, "Okay." And then he pulls a pin out of that wall. Right here. Here's where the professor is showing him how strong the wall is. And Gilligan says, "Okay," pulls a pin out, and then this is what happens. The entire hut collapses. Gilligan somehow manages to find the magic pin every time, doesn't he?
Yeah, do you think he did that on purpose so that they could all get back together, or he's just bad luck Gilligan?
I think he's bad luck. I don't think he's a narcissist or a I can't remember the word for it. Passive aggressive. Probably not. I don't think Gilligan would be spiteful like that.
No, but that could be a good tactic to get everybody back under one roof.
It would be, but if they realize that you did it on purpose, that's not going to make them like you anymore, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so next, Gilligan decides to go check out the girls' hut. So here we have the nice hut built by Marianne and Ginger. And Marianne says, "Look, yes, how wonderful it is. Let me show you the inside." And this is where Marianne realizes the door's stuck and she can't get it open. So Gilligan says, "I'll give you a hand. I'll get it open for you." And Gilligan struggles with the door, and by doing so, causes the entire hut to shake and then collapse and fall apart to where nothing is left but the door itself. Gilligan's still struggling. Then he opens the door and realizes that it's too late and says, "I got the door open." Okay, so of course, next in sequence, of course, we're going to see the Howl hut. So we get to see the wonderful Howl hut that the Howl's built. And it even has a front porch, which we'll see. There we go. You have a front porch with a hammock. So that's a nice little place there. And he's showing it to Skipper. And they're walking around the entrance. And Mr. Howell tells Gilligan to try out the hammock. And says, "Have a seat on the hammock." So Gilligan says, "Okay." And he goes over and sits on the hammock. As we see right here. And as he does, that pulls those two poles inwards. Causes the porch to collapse. And then there we go, in sequence, the entire hut collapses like all the rest of them. And there's Mr. Howell. He still has his drink in his hand, and he's still got his hat on. And then we show that it's nighttime, and there they are, all back in that same original hut. And here we are, and it's overnight, so they're showing time passing. And here they are in the hut, and here's something I wanted to point out. This scene here reminded me of the movie Rescue from Gilligan's Island, where they tied the huts together and rode out the storm. So I think that movie was a throwback to this episode and an inspiration to this episode, or for that movie is what I'm saying. So it kind of, that could be just me, but that's my opinion. So here they are riding out the storm. Marianne is scared because of the lightning and thunder, and it looks like the professor is a little worried as well. Ginger is worried as also right. She's right by the window too. In the house, and you can see Mr.
I'll be
Howell's
right
clutching
back.
Teddy. Go ahead. And Skipper's telling them that we got to ride it out. This hut is strong. And just as Skipper tells them that, one of the beams from the ceilings falls down and scares everybody. But it seems to be passing. The noise is subsiding. And I know it looks like Marianne is screaming, but she's actually with happy because this is where they realize the storm has passed. The noise has stopped. They've survived, and the hut has lasted and did not collapse. So Skipper decided that he's going to go out and check out the damage. So Skipper's the first one out the door of the hut. And when he does, Gilligan goes out to see what he found and unfortunately discovers that the hut is floating in the lagoon. So this is what reminded me from Rescue from Gilligan's Island. This is the idea that I think maybe where they got it from. So basically the storm washed the hut out into the lagoon. And when Skipper walked out the door, he fell into the water. And Gilligan is there too. And he sees the Skipper. And of course, Gilligan's going to accidentally, there he is, throwing out an anchor.
Yeah. Oh, sorry about that. The kid's getting dropped off.
No problem. And there's Gilligan throwing out the anchor, but at the same time, Gilligan forgot to let go and falls in the water. And here we are back to building again. And Gilligan has the toolbox with all the tools. So this is the first time we see all the tools together in one box. And Skipper says, absolutely whatever happens, do not let anybody have these tools. It's a lot funnier than that. I wish I could play the episode. What they say is very funny. Gilligan goes to work, and the first thing that happens is Ginger comes up, and of course she wants to borrow some tools. So Gilligan immediately, of course, with very little willpower, hands her the saw, and then he hands her a hammer, and then he's handing her a crowbar, and the crowbar falls on his foot. And here we have what's left in the toolbox. And she asked him, why don't you just carry the toolbox for me? So I wish I'd have got a still of that, but they basically walk off set with the toolbox. And that's when we fade to the ending credits here. So now we have the same ending credits, of course, for the season 1, co-starring Russell Johnson, similar to the last episode, and Don Wells. And we have our ending credits. So, like I said earlier, vote if you want to in the poll that I put. Which episode do you like better? Both? Or do you like both equally? Or do you like neither episode? Or if you'd like to give it a rating, that would be wonderful as well. And as a reminder, like I said, next week I will be using Blu-ray rips. So this will look much clearer and sharper. So I do apologize for the blurriness that we're getting. And Euler Greg says, cheers. And Terrell is laughing, probably at me. I know my skills need a little bit more practice, but just joking there, Jill. And Anti-Derivative Jill says, I'm a few minutes behind, laughing at the door bit. Yes, the physical humor, I love it.
Yeah.
Oh. And do you have any comments on these episodes, Gorilla?
If I hadn't seen this show before, I'd almost think that Gilligan is plays as stupid as he does there. But he's actually really smart. He is trying to get everybody to come back together and live under one hut. Instead of being as clumsy as he is.
Right.
I'll give this episode an A.
Thank you. And so would I. One thing I really liked about this episode and the first one is they definitely are not boring. I think they're paced well, where they're moving along at a nice clip, a nice speed, and they've always got laughs consistently throughout. So I really appreciate that. I think the writing is top notch.
And you know, the kind of nice thing about this show too is, like I was cooking supper while I was watching these,
Right.
so I was able to cook supper while still be entertained by the episode.
Very cool. You know, one thing that's fascinating is on my stream the other day, we had Pleasant Valley Picker, and he said he had never seen Gilligan's Island until recently, after he bought the DVD collection, and I thought that's fascinating. A lot of people are introduced to Gilligan's Island when they're very young, but he, as a full-grown adult, was experienced Gilligan's Island, and he still enjoyed it.
Well, we grew up on cable TV, so we had limited options there. That's stuff that would keep us kids entertained, well, and keep my mom entertained at the same time.
Well,
Because my mom was always home.
For me, it was even more limited. I grew up as a child of the 60s and 70s, so we didn't even have, it was before they had cable TV.
And
So we had,
you guys were the antenna. You had to
We were
stand
the
up there
antenna.
and hold the antenna in a certain spot.
You'd have to, yeah, what's funny is we had black and white TVs. You'd have to put the antenna in a position to get one channel good, and then move the antenna to get the other channel clear, and then move the antenna again to get the other channel clear. There was only like 3 networks and maybe one syndicated station where I lived. Where I lived, there was ABC, CBS, NBC, and then there was a syndicated station, which is where we caught Gilligan's Island. So,
What's the syndicated station?
Well, a syndicated station at the time would usually show reruns, syndicated shows, and things like that. It was not owned by the networks. It was privately owned by a company. Excuse me. But now, with the Fox network, when that came out in, I believe, the 80s, 90s, when the Fox network, that bought out a lot of those syndicated stations. So where I lived, our syndicated station became a Fox network. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is let's take a look at the results of our poll. If I can show it correctly here. All right, here we go. Here is our poll results. Which episode did you like the most? And this is with 10 votes. 2 on a Raft said 40%. Home Sweet Hut was 30%. Both got us a 20%, and neither one was at 10%. So there we are. And I love your honesty, everybody. If you don't enjoy something, feel free to tell us. That's what we're here. I'm always looking for improvements. That's why I'm here. And that's why I'll always constantly be asking everybody what their opinion is. It really doesn't do us any good if we're living in a vacuum. I love the fact that the more people that can bring in ideas, the much better the improvements are. And Anna just says, I didn't watch it until I grew up too. And I saw this was basically a live action cartoon, but it's fantastic. Just pure wholesome humor, great storytelling structure. Absolutely. And yes, you're right. You're right, Jill. Even Star Trek, Jill didn't really discover that until she was an adult. So I have to ask you, Jill, where was your life headed before you discovered Star Trek? Were you like wandering around aimlessly? I know for a lot of us that grew up with it, it pretty much solidified our lives. But imagining somebody who is not exposed to an adult and then have Star Trek overwhelm your life, that's got to be fascinating. And Euler Greg says, agreed, Jill. And Euler Greg says, but I saw it much younger than you did. Yeah, in fact, when I was exposed to it, I was like in diapers when it was playing live on the air on net primetime television. And then I was in elementary school as it went into education. And then when I got home from the school, they would show 2 episodes every day. I would get home from school, and then it was like a regimen. There'd be Gilligan's Island, I Dream of Jeannie, Bewitched, and Star Trek, sort of like roughly in that order. Kind of those, the Munsters, Addams Family. That's the kind of stuff that kind of filled up all of our days when I was a kid. And I Driven Jill says, I was reading books, doing homework, listening to CDs, watching kid stuff mostly. I know, Jill. I know you had a life outside Star Trek.
Yeah.
And especially with her being so brilliant, she obviously didn't waste her time just sitting around like a lot of couch potatoes. So that's excellent. I'm just glad that she discovered it eventually. That's always the best thing. You're never too old to discover something and fall in love with it.
Alrighty.
All right. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find out if my stream bots.
Yeah, I got tomorrow's stream set up, so we're good.
Fantastic. Let's see if I can get my Streambot element working. I've been promising myself I want to try to promote everybody's channel. Ooh, there we go. All right.
And Anti-Derivative Jill says the only grown-up stuff I watched was The Outer Limits, 90s, Tales from the Crypt, Twilight Zone.
Ooh, I love those shows too.
Yeah.
And I want to try to cover for everybody that came into the stream here. I want to thank you all. Oiler Greg, if you can hear me, if you have a channel, let us know. If you would like me to promote your channel, to include the link in the chats, I can always do that. I like to share everybody's channel with everybody. And Resolute Germ says hello, guys. So Resolute Germ was here. Here we show here.
Yeah, and he does. I'm not sure if he's still here, but he does Farscape and Lex on Tuesdays at 8 o'clock Central, and then on Saturdays at Saturday Morning Cartoons. We are watching Double Dragon, Super Mario Show, He-Man, and Reboot.
Oh, Oiler Greg does have a channel. Oh, let me. I want to highlight these chats. I don't want to skip this. All right, here. We'll go back down. And thank you, Captain, for joining us. Oiler Greg, thank you. Anti-Derivative Jill, thank you. LDG, thank you for being here.
Yeah,
LDG.
he has.
Go ahead.
I was just about to put his website in.
Thank you.
He can always, if you ever need like IT help or need a place to hang out or just someone to talk to, whether you're having a bad day or there's something you want to watch or anything, or just need someone to hang out with, he's always at freethenet.org/underground.
Yes, he's a very, very smart man, and that's an understatement. And Anti-Derivative Jill says, always loved anthologies, apparently.
Yeah.
Same here, Anti-Derivative Jill. I love anthologies. They definitely, in my opinion, never get boring. I'm not a fan of some of the newer ones, but I definitely like the classics. And Oiler Greg says, only one Oiler Greg channel, like the Salt Creature or the Buffalo. The last Oilers fan, but I don't talk football. Movie reviews mostly. That's totally fine. I'm on Twitter at PC Curator on Twitter at PC Curator. If you want to message me, Oiler Greg, send me a link to your channel and I'll add it to my Stream Elements bot so I can start including it in the chat.
Well, there, I just subbed to Oiler Greg. So.
Jill says, have you seen Black Mirror? Me, myself, Jill, I think I watched the first few episodes, I think of the first season, I think a few years back. And I haven't caught up with it. And I heard people say it is good. I think it's a British show, if I remember right. But I do need to get caught up with it.
Yeah, I kind of fell out of it, you know. I started to watch it, then I kind of fell out of it.
You have an idea how many seasons that they've made so far?
I can find out.
I know I was just getting back into the Creep Show, the new series of Creep Show. They made 2 seasons and they seem to have stopped. They made 1 season of a new Amazing Stories adaptation and stopped that as well. And Anti-Derivative Jill says, it's great. Thank you, Jill, for that recommendation. I will check that out. Especially coming from you. I know you have good taste. And everybody, I want to remind everybody before I forget, Anti-Derivative Jill has a wonderful stream. On Tuesdays, she covers Star Trek, the original series, episodes and a retrospective with her, myself, and Scotty R37, along with other guests that come and go. And it's a fascinating retrospective of Star Trek. If you like the original series, I highly recommend her stream. You will learn a lot. I think that we cover a lot of detail and trivia that most people don't know. And as I like to say, I think you'll walk out of there knowing a lot more than you did going in, and with a lot more appreciation.
Yeah.
She also has a fascinating stream on Fridays as well, so I highly recommend that.
Yeah. To your Black Mirror there, looks like there's 5 seasons, but the last one only had like 3 episodes. It looks like.
Ooh, I need to get caught up with that for sure. Then that's great. That gives me a lot of things to watch here coming up. And Ola Greg says yes, eventually, but I don't really promote my channel. Black Mirror has some good stuff. That's fine, Ola Greg. That's fine. I appreciate that. And then Jill says, "Oh, I need to see the new Creep Show. I only just saw the movie for the first time left." Oh, really, Jill? You just saw the movie? Oh, so I guess you liked it. I loved the movie. Oh my goodness! It was the collaboration of Stephen King and George Romero. Oh, that had to be one of my favorite, if not the favorite, anthology movie that I've ever seen. I love Creep Show.
Yeah.
I could watch it. I could watch it 1,000 times.
Yeah, when we get to Stephen King there, I already got 2 of the movies picked out for that.
Oh, very cool. Okay, that's great to hear.
Can you guess which 2?
What's that?
Can you guess which 2?
Based on a certain theme? I'm not sure. They made a lot of them.
It'd be Stephen King.
So just any 2 Stephen King movies?
Yeah.
I don't know. They've made so many.
Well, the only 2 I know of is Misery and It.
Those are the only 2 that you know of?
Well, that I remember.
Okay, well, I recommend The Shining, and I recommend Creep Show.
Oh, Shining was The Shining was Stephen King?
Yeah. I also recommend Cujo and Christine.
Oh, okay. I think I'll do Christine and Cujo because I've seen Cujo. That was a pretty good one.
Yes, it was, starring Dee Wallace. She was fantastic in that movie. She's the same one who played the mother in E.T.
Okay.
And Anti-Derivative Jill says, don't really promote your channel. Well, that's pretty good. You have 1,000 subs at LOL at Orla Greg.
And only
nice.
65 videos. Like mine there, I got 218 subs, and I've made over 350 videos.
Well, I'm jealous. I don't have it nearly as much as any of you guys. Even Anti-Derivative Jill has more videos and more subs than I do, but she's been at this longer than I have.
Well, most of my subs came from my shorts.
Oh, well, that's always a good thing. That's why I need to produce more shorts. I know they don't help our channel analytics very much, but they definitely bring in the subs. And Ola Greg says, yes, don't be a Gorn. Subscribe to Jill's channel. And then Derivative Jill puts out the link to her channel. Thank you, Jill. And Derivative Jill says, yes, Creep Show was an amazing movie. Thank you, Jill. I agree completely. We need to talk about it sometime. There's so much I would love to discuss about that movie. And there's a car passing by. Okay. Thank goodness it didn't set off the alarm on that van again. And Ola Greg says, well, I stream with a German guy, and a lot of people subscribe to me, although I'm not sure why. Movie reviews and chill recipes. My channel is eclectic. That's funny. So you ask for them or not, you bring in the subs. So whatever you're doing, apparently it's the right thing to do. And people seem to be enjoying it. Okay, so Gorilla, why don't you, before we close this out? Oh, and Anti-Derivative Jill says, well, actually, you've been at it streaming at least as long as I have, because you've been my co-host since the beginning. Thank you for that. Though I know you mean for your channel. Yes, Jill, and Jill's reminding me, we both pretty much start streaming at the exact same time. I know we were both nervous. I still remember her voice at the beginning where she was nervous, and she's coming to her own now, and she's got a lot more confidence, and her streams are excellent. She has some fantastic panelists. But one thing that also hurt me too was kind of halfway through, I sort of accidentally got my channel deleted, and I had to kind of start over again. But no loss, you know.
And notice, Jill, on Tuesday, you were so worried about me there, and even though I kept my one comment there, I bit my tongue the rest of the day. I was the one being the clean one on there. Just wanted to point that out.
I appreciate it, Gorilla. You did a great job.
Yeah, so I knew not to go too far on it. But I had to point that out. That was the funniest thing.
And I realized that Pleasant Valley Picker CA just came in. Good to see you, Pleasant Valley Picker. I just put a link to your channel in there.
Yeah, hey,
And I
PvP.
Derivative Jill says, yes, you must be really fun to listen to at Euler Greg. I'm going to try to check out your streams, Euler Greg. And Euler Greg says hi. And I Derivative Jill says hi at Pleasant Valley Pickers, yay. And I Derivative Jill says thank you. And PvP, we also call Pleasant Valley Pickers CA PvP. So if you hear me refer to that term, that's who I'm talking about. So PvP says, just got home from work a while ago and checking out some videos just after I finished my late supper. All right, well, thank you for stopping by. And that's me putting a link to PvP's channel there. I hope you don't mind, PvP. And Euler Greg says, y'all have excellent channels. Keep it up and you'll have great success. Well, thank you. Thank you. We do our best. And I agree with you there. I'm a little partial, but I do agree. I think our channels are fantastic as well. And I Derivative Jill says, I know you were awesome, Gorilla. See, there you go, huh?
Yeah.
And I Derivative Jill says, what's the German guy's channel at Euler Greg? And Pleasant PvP says, we watched most of the What Are Little Girls Made Of and was great fun. Oh, absolutely. I had a blast too. And thank you, PvP, for being there, by the way. I know you had technical difficulties, but we all do at times.
Yeah.
And I Derivative Jill says, thank you, Pleasant Valley Picker.
All right.
And he says, no, don't mind. Thank you. And Pleasant Valley Picker says, and I Derivative Jill, you guys had very interesting comments.
Yeah. Okay, so what I got going on is tomorrow I'm defending the Microwave Massacre, but I might change Thursdays to reviewing a show kind of like this, because it's getting hard having the people pick out shows and all that, especially if I get a slow Thursday there. Then having people pick out shows, sometimes it gets hard, and you got to think though what to defend and all that. So I think I'm reviewing a show and all that, but I'm not quite sure on that. Saturday we are watching Babylon 5. Sunday we are watching Psycho 4 in the beginning.
Ooh.
And then we do Stranger Things on Wednesdays, right before Gilligan's Island.
Very cool. And if you ever run out of ideas for things to defend, always come to me. I think I can keep you busy for a while.
Yeah. No, I think a switch it to kind of like a review thing too. Save that.
Oh, yeah, that's always an option.
Get people coming in.
Okay, yeah, that's a great idea. And PvP says, and I Derivative Jill, oh, by the way, Jill, got your email about changing days on streams you're modding. Okay, very cool.
Wait, Jill's changing the days she's doing her things, or is someone else changing things?
Well, he says streams that she's modding, so I don't think that's her streams. It's the other streams that she's on.
Okay.
So on my channel, on Mondays we cover Star Trek the Animated Series each week, and our Derivative Jill joins me, and usually Scotty R37 is usually there as well. And we go through each episode each week, and I think just like with TOS, I think you're going to learn a lot of fresh information and trivia that I think you will find exciting, and you'll walk away with a whole new appreciation of the episodes. And we'll have our next one next Monday. So basically, come to my channel if you enjoy what you see. Come to my channel on Mondays. Tuesdays, keep it open for Anti-Derivative Jill channel for Star Trek TOS. Wednesdays, if you can make the time to come by and visit my Gilligan's Island stream, that will help. That kind of make it a trifecta. So remember, TAS Monday, TOS Tuesday, Gilligan's Island Wednesdays. And Pleasant Valley Picker says, no, not Jill streams. And I Derivative Jill says, no, he's talking about something different, PvP, and I have to reschedule our Man from Uncle watch parties. I need to get caught up on Man from Uncle. I've only seen a few episodes, and that was a long time ago, and I know it's fantastic, and it has a great cast. In fact, it's great that David McCallum is still alive. I know he's old, but I'm glad to see that he's still alive. I don't know if you know, Jill, but David Callum, after The Man from Uncle, had a short-lived series called The Invisible Man, where he played the Invisible Man. It only lasted one season on NBC. But now he's on some police procedural show. I don't know what it is. And let me see. I'm making sure I try to cover all the chats here. And PBB says in the chat at Anti-Derivative Jill, yes, let me know what time will work. I left my comment which days work for me. Very cool. And I hope I covered everybody in the chat. If I missed calling out or shouting out your name, it's not intentional. I am scrolling through the chat now, hoping that I covered everybody, and I hope I didn't miss any chats. And PvP says, yes, I remember Invisible Man. Hey, there's somebody almost as old as me. And Anna Jill says, you did. Okay, very cool. All right. So this lasted for 2 hours, this stream. That's longer than I expected. And I'm very, very much in appreciation for everybody spending your time with me. It means a lot to me. I hope you had just as good a time as I did. I think this is fantastic, and I think it's a blast. Between Star Trek and Gilligan's Island, I could talk about them forever. And in further streams, I'll be covering more information from the book Inside Gilligan's Island by Sherwood Schwartz. So please join us each week. You'll sure to get a smile, and you'll learn more about this show every time. And Pleasant Valley Picker says, David, was it NCIS? That's it. Not sure if he's still on the show. I know it's one of those. I used to, when I visited my sister, she would have it on the TV, and those shows all look the same to me, so I couldn't remember which one. Ola Greg says, Later Gators. And I Jill says, After a while, Crocodile.
Then there's See You Soon, Baboon.
Oh. Okay, well, fantastic time. Gorilla, thank you so much for joining me and helping me out. This was
not a problem.
Yeah, it means a lot. Like I said, it does mean a lot to me, and I think these are going to improve and get better and better over time.
We just gotta keep to that 9 o'clock start time instead of 8.
Okay, so everybody heard that. So this stream will be Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Pacific, 9 Central. That seems to work best for both of us. So that hopefully that's not too late for those of you out there. I know everybody's on a different schedule of some sort.
And you can always catch us on the rerun.
Boulder Greg says, correct response, Jill. That's the first time. Okay. Yes, yes. Thank you, Gorilla. Yes, if you are not able to, please catch us on the rerun. And if you're listening in the future and you're listening on a rerun, I hope you enjoy the stream. And please hit the like button and sub to my channel if you enjoy it. I will be bringing more content that I hope that you're all entertained with. I have a lot of ideas that I want to share. So everybody take care. Have a wonderful night and peace.
Have a good night, everyone.